Councilor Joseph, do you want to just unmute so we can test your sound?
Good morning. Sound check, testing.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're coming, everybody's coming across loud and clear, so I think we're good to go. So I know all senior staff are with us as well. So when I get the heads up from Megan, we'll get underway.
Okay, so we are now live streaming. Jeff can confirm. So from our end, we are good to go.
Yep, please proceed.
Okay, well, we'll get underway. It is a couple of minutes before 11 o'clock, but this is a special council meeting. And we do have a quorum. We're here, every one of us, and 9 of us are here. So, and again, I'm going to be dispensing of the formalities this morning because this is a special council meeting. So with that, Madam Clerk, are there any agenda announcements and or amendments? The clerk indicates that there are none. To my colleagues, is any member of council any disclosures that they have? Usually my colleagues and myself are pretty good at making the clerk aware if we do. So unless I see a hand go up, I will assume that no one has a disclosure. With that being said, I might make mention that CEO Andrew and Megan and I are in the committee room, and we are at least 2 hockey sticks apart from one another. So with the help of Nina there in directing traffic and with the assistance of Andrew and Megan, that's reasonably close to me. Hopefully everything goes well this morning. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Cluett and second by Councillor Melboof, and be it resolved, the council approves the necessary bylaw amending procedure bylaws 007-2019 to allow electronic delegate participation in council meetings pursuant to the Municipal Emergency Act 2020. And that will be the resolution that we will be dealing with in just a short while. But I'm going to get Megan, our clerk, to highlight this report because she is the author of it. So Megan, if you'd be so kind to introduce this, and then we'll get to any questions or any comments by any member of council. So Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. So within the report and the proposed bylaw for consideration, staff have included provisions for delegations to participate electronically during our electronic council meetings via telephone or video. So the process would be similar to our existing process for council meetings, in that delegations would register ahead of time, and they could do so via our website or by calling staff. Of course, we would still continue to receive written submissions if someone did not wish to participate electronically. Within the report, we propose that the deadline to register as a delegation be moved up to noon, which is 2 days before the meeting. And that's just to assist with our staff connecting with delegations to make sure that their equipment has been tested and that they are comfortable going into the meeting. So we're also requiring written remarks in the event that there is a disconnection. So staff are working to finalize a guide for electronic delegations at the moment, and should we receive council approval, we'll proceed with communicating this information appropriately on our website. So upon council's approval of the bylaw today, the May 25th council meeting would be the first council meeting in which we would allow electronic participation of delegations. As noted within the report, considerations and procedures for electronic participation of delegations in statutory public meetings are currently being reviewed, and further information will be brought forward at a later date.
Clerk, are there any questions, any comments with regards to that report 02820? Any questions, any comments? Again, Nina, I will rely on you if you're seeing any indication.
Councillor Challenor had a note that he had a question. Councillor Challenor, was this the report that you had a question on?
No.
Okay, no, I think you are good, Mayor.
Okay, no one on 2820? If not, then I will assume that everyone is in favor of that, unless I see a hand go up in objections. So that is carried. The next report that we will be dealing with is report 006-20. And I have a move by Councillor Cluett and second by Councillor Malboof, and be it resolved the report ES 006-20 be received for information. And again, this is the update. And Andrew, I'm going to go to you to highlight your report. And then after that, I'll be going to council to see if there's any comments or questions. So, Andrew?
Nina, you need to turn my video on as the host. You've stopped it.
Just bear with me 1 second. Okay. There you go.
Great. Thanks, Nina. Mayor, members of council, thanks for the opportunity to introduce our report, the ES 006-20, which is our COVID-19 update. It's a fairly comprehensive report, as everybody's had a chance to read all 14 pages of it. And there's lots of information in there for members of council and for the community. We hope to try to put it in a comprehensive form so that we can use this as a point in time piece of the response to date, and use that as a basis for going forward. So before you do sort of consider the report itself, I really want to reiterate that overall it's important to remember that our position and our principles for decision making on COVID-19 have always been 5 key points. Number 1, the safety of staff and the public is of paramount importance. Number 2, continuation in the delivery of essential services. 3, responding to the needs of the community as the pandemic evolves. 4, fair and equitable treatment of the town's workforce. And 5, fiscal responsibility and the appropriate use of taxpayers' funding. So those are our 5 principles that we consistently go back to when we're looking at our decision-making response. So the report itself provides a pretty good summary of everything that's been done to date. And I think it's important to note that we've reached the 8-week mark this week in response to our efforts. And I think this requires just a quick moment of time to pause and reflect on the significant work that's been already done in these unusual times and unusual circumstances. And as such, I'd like to thank the mayor and members of council for your unrelenting support throughout the COVID-19 response. You've continued to make yourselves available, like today, for special council meetings, for individual conversations when we've needed, to give your guidance to the leadership team, and that's been greatly appreciated. Our staff at all levels have demonstrated their need, their ongoing commitment, their flexibility, their adaptability to evolve within this difficult situation. Together, Milton has risen to the occasion, and in today's report, council will observe that significant work has been done to date. The work that continues and how we're positioning Milton to recover from the pandemic and return to a state of what would be a new normal. The report includes a timeline that captures the complexity of the pandemic response and how the actions to date position the town as a highly responsive, using a combination of both proactive and reactive measures, requiring adaptability and flexibility and a commitment to business continuity. An update on the business continuity. There's a large portion of the town's business continues to be delivered through alternative ways, and we're quite proud that we've been able to continue in our business continuity strategy. As a result of the current landscape, we've implemented new and innovative approaches to delivering our service, and these continuous quality improvements are benefits that will leverage us in the future. Our workforce strategy, we've included the strategy to date to adjust service level changes, and as a result, we will wait for the provincial orders and the significant health and safety measures that will follow them. We've also included within the body of the report a financial update to highlight the property tax and development charges collection in light of property tax and development charges reliefs that have been made available. At this time, I'd like to welcome any questions from members of council and your feedback on the report.
Andrew, thank you very much. I do have start of a speakers list, and in this order so far, Councillor Challoner, Councillor Ali, and Councillor Tester Dirksen, in that order. So, Councillor Challoner.
Thank you, Your Worship. My first question is around the current levels of staffing at Town Hall. Is it adequate in your mind, Andrew, today, or are we perhaps being a little too conservative in terms of allowing people back into the office to complete their functions? I realize that some of them are doing it from home, but could it be done from Town Hall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Challoner. We feel quite comfortable actually in the way we've been delivering those services. We've found a new normal in the way we can deliver many of the services that need to be done. So at this point, we feel it's adequate. The bringing people back into the town hall will be a difficult exercise, and one in which we're going to need a significant lead from the provincial government in terms of what the Ministry of Labour guidelines will look like. But at this point, we feel like everything that we need to be doing can be done remotely at this time.
Your Worship, through you, my second question relates to timing. And at this point, the province has identified July 5th as the date. We were operating on the basis of May 31st for the most part. I think July 5th was a part of our thinking. At this point, are we moving the dates out beyond that, or are we still waiting at this point for the province?
Andrew.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we're out to July 5th at this point. Keeps us in lockstep with that, but we are waiting for some direction from the province in terms of what the future might look like. When I say we're waiting, it doesn't mean we're parked in neutral. We're actually building our own recovery plan right now that will show how we reintroduce staff, how we reopen our facilities. So although we're waiting for the go from the province and how this might look like, what the Ministry of Labour requirements might look like, we're building our recovery plan that can address some of those with some flexibility based on what we might expect to hear from the province.
Thank you, Your Worship.
You still have the floor there, but before I get to the next speaker, I think it's important for me to editorialize, I think, a little bit to start with. As recently as last Friday, there was a LUMCO meeting that went on for 2 or 3 hours or more with the large municipalities of the province of Ontario. There were 4 ministers on that call. There were 3 provincial cabinet ministers and 1 federal cabinet minister, and we were all talking about the very things that you, Councillor Challoner, was talking about. So there's going to be, I suspect, a great deal of coordination, especially with those large municipalities in the province of Ontario. Certainly not forgetting the smaller municipalities, and I think the same would be safe to suggest the 4 mayors in Halton. We've had our heads together with a bit of coordination. And again, I emphasize with a great deal of help from all the CAOs as well in the Halton municipality, and of course with the CAO from the region. And that's happening across the province. So coordination is going to be important. As an example, to illustrate, I don't know, I think it would be foolhardy, say, for Milton to open the town hall on one date, Burlington on another, Oakville on another, and Halton Hills on another. So those are the types of things that's being talked about now. So that's just a bit of a thumbnail sketch as to what's evolving around a lot of this. Again, as Andrew has said, we're hoping to take a bit of direction from the province on giving us some guidelines. But I suspect that a lot of the decisions will be made left up to the individual municipalities and or counties or regions. So just with that, Andrew, you might want to add to that, and then John, I'll get back to you because you did have the floor. Andrew?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Challoner, one of the things that I think we will find incredibly helpful. So we are going to be, you'll see it within the body of the report, but we're going to be reconvening the Mayor's Leadership Roundtable, and that brings together many of the private sector employers in Milton. And one of the things that we've done with that group consistently is we've asked them in our normal course of business, how would you handle this? How do you do various things. And so we're going to be asking them some questions in terms of how they might be introducing their workforce as well. So just so that you know, our eyes are open. We're not just looking to the provincial directives themselves. We're looking to how others might be handling this challenge and where we might get some good ideas from.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just two quick comments. My last question is a financial one, of course. What else would you expect from me? But first of all, Your Worship, thank you for your comment about LUMCO. I think it's really important that there is coordination between the province and the municipalities. We've already seen potential problems created by the federal government and the provinces with respect to when the provinces want to go back, and that's not good. Andrew, to your point about the business community, I think it's vitally important that the business community be engaged. I had sent a note to His Worship last week on that. I really believe that the Chambers of Commerce should be involved, as should the banking community and the Chief Officer of Medical Health for Halton, in any kind of discussion around returning to some sense of normalcy. Got a lot of respect, Your Worship, for you and the other mayors, but I think that the chambers and the banks are very close to what's going on Main Street, and they need to be, I think, heard. My last question is around the finances, Your Worship. Has anything changed from the last financial report in terms of what we thought might be the scenarios fiscally, depending on the time of year that we end up going back to providing programs and some services? Or from Glenn's last report, are we kind of status quo? There has been no change at this point.
Okay, Andrew, I'm going to flip it over to you and Glenn as well. So Andrew, do you have any comment before I go to Glenn? Glenn, maybe if you would just address Councillor Chandler's question.
Absolutely. So at this time, there hasn't been a material change in terms of what the numbers related to each of the scenarios look like. As we move forward, we will be able to refine more which of the scenarios is the most likely one. It doesn't mean that we've stopped the analysis. We have continued to analyze, and there are some things that have changed, just not in a material enough way yet, that we think it's value add to bring those forward at this time. Instead, I think the next significant update that you're going to see is at the point in time where there's announcements made about summer programming. Then we'll go back with those in mind and be able to essentially at that point scale back the scenarios. The one thing we did include in terms of new financial information for council was just flagging the one mitigation opportunity that you're going to see in more detail next council meeting with the purchasing report. But there is an opportunity to bring some savings that we've seen from a recent contract award over as a form of mitigation. So again, in the next update, we'll be able to consolidate that with the other mitigations that have already been identified as well for council.
Councillor Chandler?
My question, just a quick comment on that. I think the report is a great template for information sharing, but I would suggest that if possible, give consideration to adding financial information to the back of it, perhaps as an appendix, so that council has a reference.
I'm going to suggest that will happen, John. John, just further to your comment with your letter that you sent in, Andrew and I did chat about it, and it's been forwarded to the appropriate people for that consideration. We take it very serious, and I thank you very much for that. And for everybody's information, the Chamber of Commerce, they have a weekly Zoom meeting with many participants. If I recall rightly, last week there was roughly 50 odd businesses involved in that Zoom. And I know some of my elected colleagues go on that as well. And it's been the practice, both the MP, MPP, and myself participate in that. And it's gone over reasonably well with input from the Chamber of Commerce. So I think that's critically important moving forward. Again, Councillor Chandler, you had the floor. Anything further?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Ali, you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is with regards to the plantation of trees, and this is page 5, and it says that tree planting has been moved to fall, and it says the planting of annuals has been canceled. So I just wanted some clarity on why this is happening and why this has moved to fall and why the annuals have been canceled.
Okay, I think Christina might be the most appropriate to address that. Ms. Scott, if you would.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Ali, the reason the annuals program was canceled was simply from a workforce capability and a maintenance perspective. And the deferral of the trees, same situation. It's related to our workforces. So we're not canceling the program. We're just suggesting that we're going to be moving forward unless circumstances change where we're able to bring on our workforce and timing and weather and such. The work scheduled for spring will take place in the fall.
Thank you for that answer, Christine. That answers my question. I have another question regarding marriage licenses. I wanted to know if we are thinking about resuming those. People are really concerned. There were plans that have to be canceled. So if we can put that in one of our priority items. I know St. Thomas, Ontario has been doing this throughout the COVID-19 situation. So I do recommend staff to look at what they're doing and try to see if we can emulate that.
Now, Samara, and again, I'm going to flip over to our clerk there because a lot of that comes under her jurisdiction. So maybe Megan, if you could allude to Councillor Ali's question.
Thank you for your question. Through you, Your Worship. We are monitoring what other municipalities are currently doing with offering marriage licenses. I understand that St. Thomas is an example. The City of Kitchener has also released that they will be looking to providing some marriage licenses by appointment, and we're just making connections with them about the appropriate protective equipment as well as the processes that they're using to see if that is something that we could take into consideration to offer here.
Thank you so much, Megan. I really hope we can look into it and get some positive results. One last question, and this is about the reopening of fields and parks. I know that we look at the region and the province when it comes to our COVID response, but do we have some freedom to kind of customize our response and our opening of fields? For example, not all communities are built the same, especially sports communities. There are some communities like Milton where cricket is really important. And a cricket, if you notice, is a contact-free kind of sport. So do we have the flexibility or the freedom to open sooner or in a better way, or just allow sports that are contact-free to go forward?
Ms. Scott?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Ali. So a couple of things, Councillor Ali. Number one, the sports fields are under the provincial declaration. So right now we cannot open them even if we wanted to. And the other challenge as we're liaising with our sports associations, including the provincial bodies, is the gathering of more than 5 people. Currently that is not permitted. And in looking at what other provinces are doing regarding sports fields, it's not something right now that I think is going to be part of the first phase or even maybe even the second phase until the social gatherings and that physical distancing element is lifted.
Councillor Ali?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Christine. That answers all my questions.
Thank you very much. Just before I get to Councillor Tesser Dirksen, there's some of you that you were observing maybe things went a little dark here a few moments ago. That's what happens when you get 3 of us sitting in a fairly good sized room when the lights are on motion detection. So that will share with you that we're setting reasonably quiet because the lights went out and Megan had to get up and wave her hands to get the lights to come back on. So that's what happened here. So Councillor Tesser Dirksen, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Hi, everyone. And I am having some internet issues over here at my house. So if I cut out, I apologize. Just wave at me and I'll stop and repeat. Firstly, I want to commend staff and thank them for the report. This has been, I mean, it goes without saying, it's been an unprecedented situation. I've heard it likened to learning to fly a plane while you're in the air. And that's kind of how everybody's feeling, but somehow we're keeping the thing soaring. So that's good. And thanks everyone for your efforts. First comment I just want to make, Megan, with respect to those marriage licenses, as you were speaking, I was just thinking about how we're handling things on the legal side. And I have a lot of clients that I have to commission affidavits for, and I believe that's part of the marriage license application. And the Law Society has actually made amendments to the requirements, and they are allowing virtual commissioning. And what we've been doing is we've been emailing the documents to our clients. They print them out at home. We make an appointment to do a virtual session. I watch them sign virtually, and they can either drop the documents off or mail them or scan them in, and then I can commission in counterpart. And that's for people who are, you know, getting mortgages and stuff, and it's acceptable to the banks and to the Law Society. So I'm getting some emails too from people who have wedding plans, and they're bringing up the example of St. Thomas, who I guess they are doing in-person appointments there, but there are ways around doing the in-person side of things if there's a concern about a contact transmission. So just a comment there.
Just if I might, Megan, on that, or Councillor Tesser-Dirksen to Megan on that, just where we are at that point. And I think that's an important point that you just made. So Megan, if you would just comment on what Councillor Tesser-Dirksen has raised.
Through your worship, no, thank you for that comment. With respect to Commissioner Vos, we will explore that further as far as the ability to be able to do that electronically. I think with the marriage licenses, there is a commissioning aspect of that, as well as the exchange and review of original documentation. And there has been a really great lobbying effort among municipalities to, you know, speak with the Registrar General and see if there are some changes that may be able to be made to assist with that process, but thank you for that note.
Comment, and I think it had to be addressed there, so hopefully that brings a little clarity not only to you and to me, but to the general public out there as to where it is. Because as an example, if you're thinking about buying a home, the importance of those legal documents are important if it's going to be a partnership with husband or wife or whatever. So yeah. Councillor Tesser-Dirksen, back to you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Megan, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to the report, I did have a few questions, more so to do with what's said at the end of the report as we look forward to the recovery and the transition phase as we get back to a new normal, I guess. And I'm curious just about the point that was made about absenteeism, Andrew. So I'm wondering if you're talking about absenteeism with people actually calling in and not being able to come to work either because they are self-isolating, or if that's, I guess, a mandatory absenteeism, like if you're trying to stagger staff so that there aren't so many people in the building all at once. So maybe just if you could comment on what you mean there by that absenteeism.
Andrew?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it takes into account both of those scenarios, to be honest with you. It's the whole issue of what do we do, you know, in the event that we start to have shortages of people. I want to be careful here too. There are labor requirements in terms of how people return to work. And we want to make sure that the safety of our employees is taken care of first and foremost. So we'll put people only in safe situations, and people's need to feel safe will be at the top of our mind when it talks to those kinds of things.
Councillor Tesser-Dirksen.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just leading from that point, Andrew, I'm just wondering, because I suspect it's going to happen, if we get people who are required to report back to the workplace physically, who maybe just aren't comfortable doing so. I'm just wondering what types of HR policies are going to be in place to address that. I mean, typically when someone's required to report to work, they have to come to work. But in this situation, I think we're going to see a lot of people saying, I'm just not ready to come back. I'm too scared. Maybe they have an immunocompromised family member at home, you know, the types of accommodations and how we're going to address that from an HR perspective.
Okay, Andrew, and I know, Troy, you had a lot of that up there as well. Either one of you gentlemen want to address that. It's very critical, and I suspect, Councillor Tesser-Dirksen, you're going to get exactly some of that happening. on both scenarios.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, before I pass it to Troy, just so that you know, part of our recovery plan that we're putting together is addressing all of those challenges. So from the physical, in terms of the barriers required, in terms of potential for PPE that needs to be required, we've actually begun to source the materials that we need. However, we are going to be waiting for Ministry of Labor guidelines as to what return to work for those people in the physical office space will look like. I'll pass it to Troy if there's anything additional he'd like to add as well.
Troy?
Nothing further, Your Worship. Well answered by Andrew.
Thank you. Councillor Tesser-Dirksen?
That's all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cluett?
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thanks staff, Andrew and everybody for this report. I'm glad to see that the business continuity plan is in place, and as the mayor mentioned, I want to thank publicly the Milton Chamber of Commerce for taking a really big role over the last several weeks in providing commentary, providing opportunities for businesses and residents to get together virtually in these weekly meetings. And to thank our MP Adam Van Couverden and MPP Parham Gill for attending, and also yourself for attending these and providing answers to the questions that people have. And going forward, there's going to be a lot more, and I'm glad to see that we're going to have the Mayor's Roundtable take part in those discussions as well, because those are the feet on the street, as Councillor Challoner mentioned, that we're going to need to hear from to get advice on how we go forward. I think Andrew touched on it to begin with, but there's a lot of information in this report that would be great for, I guess, public consumption, just to let everybody know what's going on. Is there a plan for some kind of comprehensive review or social media or communication strategy just to get this information out? Because a lot of these, we get a lot of these questions from residents, and it'd be great to say, well, here's sort of a quick snapshot document going forward.
Andrew?
Yeah, thanks for the question through you, Mr. Mayor. That's one of the reasons why we wanted the report to be comprehensive, and then we will begin with the complete report, getting it out there to the community, and then pieces of the report as well, so that people can understand the various sections. So it'll form it will inform our social media and communication strategy over the next little while. It'll be the nuts and bolts for it. So thank you.
Oh, that's great. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Everything else has been asked and answered, so that's great.
Very good. I do not, to the best of my knowledge, have any further speakers, but on this report, for the first time or even the second time, is there any member of council, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, you heard me read the resolution before that report ES 00620 be received for information. I will assume that no one has any objections on that unless I see a hand go up. So again, it's carried. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Cluett, second by Councillor Malboof, and be it resolved that bylaws numbers 031-2020 and 032-2020 be read, passed, and numbered, that the mayor and the town clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaws, seal them with the seal of the corporation, that they be engrossed in the bylaw book. Any questions on the reading of these two bylaws? If not, unless I see a hand go up, I will assume that it's carried. It's carried. Now, members of council, there is a confidential session that's been set aside. I was chatting with the clerk and the CEO earlier on this morning, and I asked specifically if they wanted to go into camera, and they do not need to go into camera. But if any one of us want to go into camera, then we definitely will. So if I could have an indication like this, if there's even one member of council wants to go into camera, we will do that. Other than the the recommendation is that it be treated as information. I'm pretty familiar with what's in that, and I'm only assuming that all of council is as well. So is there any member of council that wants to go into camera to deal with this in-camera report? Madam Clerk, I am observing that there is no one at this moment that wishes to go into camera. So do we have a motion? I have a motion moved by Councillor Cluett, second by Councillor Melboof, and be it resolved that recommendations contained in staff report ES 005-20 be approved. And again, seeing that that's a confidential item, I will assume that that's carried. But just before I sign that, I believe on the May 25th meeting, Andrew, there will be a lot more detail dealing with the items that's in this in-camera report that we're going to receive and file as information on that report. So, Andrew, just on that point before I sign that, just in case there's any questions.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So at this point, we await the guidance from the province in terms of what their next phase may look like, what the Ministry of Labor guidelines may look like, some decision-making points that we make. And so it may be for the May 25th meeting, but depending on the timing of when we can hear from the province, it could be a special meeting organized after the May 25th meeting.
Okay, with that understanding, is there any comment by any of my colleagues? No comment. I'm sorry, Councillor Chandler, yes?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a suggestion for staff to consider. It's your call, unless there's other councillors who feel the same. But it may be a consideration that that the report that is now our template be updated every couple of weeks to reflect changing realities. And, you know, do we need to see it in this form in terms of a council meeting? That's council's decision, but it might be a good idea for staff to consider updating that template every 2 weeks and circulating it to council so that we have the latest information.
Councillor Chandler, I'm certainly going to suggest that happen, but will that cause any concern or any issues, Andrew?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not at all. I mean, I think it's a good format and it can give us the opportunity to give an update on those various categories. So we'll take that as staff direction.
Councillor Chandler, any further?
That's it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, anything further by any one of my colleagues on this? And again, I will sign this and give it to the clerk, and takes care of report ES 005-20. Okay, Madam Clerk, I know that this is a special council meeting. Is there anything that we have forgotten? Is there anything that any member of council wish brought up or making any point at this time before I adjourn this special council meeting? Members of council? Staff? Andrew, is there anything from your point?
Nothing at all, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, then this council meeting is now adjourned to meet on May the 25th at 11 o'clock. Members of council, staff, thank you very much. This meeting is now adjourned.